Hi, I'm Murray Hidary. I'm the creator and composer of MindTravel. The basic premise was if you don't feel out of you that pain, it will stay inside and turn into something else. It's got to be felt out of us. And that was the journey, through music. We can communicate very complex things that we just don't have the words for.
Welcome to Season 2 of Brave Talks. Today, I interview Murray Hidary, a composer, entrepreneur, adventurer, teacher, lifelong learner, and dear friend of mine. Murray has a wealth of wisdom and a unique perspective on how pain and beauty in life can be windows into deeper connection. Murray is a multi-disciplinary artist and tech pioneer, and the creator and composer of his musical experience, MindTravel. He tours his innovative, immersive experiences like his live piano 360 visual experiences, MindTravel SilentWalks, and underwater meditations to audiences across the globe in person and, in recent times, virtually. To date, MindTravel has been experienced in over 70 cities by over 150,000 people in countries across the globe. Murray is also a certified meditation teacher and grief counselor. I wanted to get started by telling everyone how we know each other. And I was going to give my version of the story first, but then I was like, what if I get it wrong? So I'd rather you give your version first.
Well, no, we met at the Mind Body Green Revitalize conference in Miraval in Arizona back some number of years ago. We won't say how many. And we met at we were seated across from each other at lunch, and we had a beautiful outdoor lunch with a whole group, and we connected and became friends ever since.
I'll say you're batting, in terms of my memory, you're batting about like 800.
Okay.
So it was 2014. Okay. And we met at the Wellbeing Symposium for Mind Body Green in Miraval. And I thought it was dinner.
Okay. Well, maybe an early dinner. It's definitely light out.
No, it was dark out. It was dark. I'm drinking red wine. What kind of wine do you like? And you're like, I don't drink. And I was like, but I remember there being wine at the table. But I think it was Perry that was drinking. Because at the time I was a teetotaler and I wasn't drinking. And I remember wine.
Yeah. Now that I recall, yes, that you say that, I think it was dinner. I think there was just so much light because of your presence. So I think that's
okay. We'll go.
I think that's what I'm recalling.
And we met. I was like the third wheel to you and Perry's adventure in our mutual friend Perry Reeves, your adventure in the desert together, which was so fascinating to me because you went to the retreat as friends and you bunked up together in the same room and had couples massages, yet not romantically involved, which was fascinating to me on many levels. And I just fell in love with both of you guys and had laughed so hard that night and just enjoyed myself so much that I was like, okay, we're going to be forever friends. Like I'm just attaching myself to you guys. So.
Yeah. And actually, now that I recall that weekend, it's true. We did do couples massages as friends, primarily for the economic savings of the package deal. I mean, come on. I mean, can you blame us? I mean, we laughed the whole time. We had a great time. We had fun. But we actually didn't bunk together. I actually was put in a room with another friend who I met that weekend, who's become another good friend, which is the meditation teacher, Light Watkins. And
really?
Light and I were both teaching or, presenting that weekend. So we were put up in the presenter's room. And so the two of us were in the room together, and that's where I met Light and became buddies with him. And we connected on that trip. So it was a really wonderful weekend in terms of forging fantastic friendships that have lasted till today, so many years later.
I think it was too. I mean, I know it was. I'm friends with like everyone I met there and like deep friendships. That's cool. I didn't realize you were with Light. I am batting 800 as well. So we're even. One thing I didn't know when I met you was an experience that had happened to you not so early before you had arrived. I guess it was like, I don't know, 5 years before you had arrived to Arizona, that you had experienced such deep grief with the loss of your sister. And I had never known that about you, even through our wonderful friendship over almost 10 years. And then you sent me this article that you wrote for Commune, and it really exploded my heart and gave me more understanding about your work with mind travel and so many other things. So just to give our listeners some backstory, can you explain the grief that you went through before we jump into talking about like grief and the portal of it?
Yeah, of course. So it was back in December of 2006, and I was on a holiday vacation with my little sister. I'm from a family of five. I'm the second of five, and my sister was the youngest of five. And there's about a 12-year difference between our ages. And despite the age difference, the two of us were, extremely close. And so we just did a lot of stuff together, and including traveling together. And so we took a holiday vacation to South Africa. And while on that incredible adventure, we were touring the countryside of Cape Town by the coast. It was just a glorious afternoon. And this is a landscape that is just breathtaking. It's just fantastical. There's like wild ostrich running beside you, and beautiful cliffs and sand dunes and ocean views. It's just absolutely spectacular. And after this glorious day, just minutes from returning back to our hotel, there was a horrific sudden accident, and my sister, along with another friend of ours, were both killed instantly. There was about 8 or 9 of us on that afternoon sojourn, and of course we were there, and I witnessed it and saw what happened, and of course had to deal with the aftermath of that at the scene. So it was an incredibly, of course, shocking, and it just time stops, and you're thrust into the moment of this horrific scene. So in the aftermath of that, it was dealing with, not just the death of my sister, but also the trauma associated with having seen and experienced, what I did. So there was just a lot to untangle on the heels of that experience. And, just starting with, the scene in that moment of just the choices that I felt, I had to make and I was confronted with. First and foremost was letting my parents know, so my sister was 23 at the time. And, so I just felt an immediate responsibility to call my parents to let them know what had happened. It's kind of like I put myself in their shoes, and I was like, when would I want to know this information, right? And of course, it was, the most difficult phone call I probably have ever made and probably could ever make. But I called them right from the scene, got them on the phone together, and told them, the news. And of course, at the other end, thousands of miles away in New York, I could hear, just the primal scream of my mother, and having now lost her only daughter. And so it was, on the one hand, I had to be present for the logistics of what had to be done, what needed to be taken care of in that moment, just in terms of handling the situation. And at the same time, going through what I was going through emotionally, like the shock of it, and just trying to process as best I could what was going on in such a horrific scene, right? There's the visual of it, which is just, it's like a battle scene. So it was a lot to process. And so being able, on the one hand, I was feeling it. At the same time, I did have to shift to observe what was happening, to then put the pieces in motion to actually get done what needed to get done, right? Which eventually was, included, going back to the hotel and packing up her room and her clothes, and of course making the arrangements to get her on a plane, get a flight, and fly back to New York with her, of course, on the bottom of the plane. So, that was probably the longest flight of my life. I mean, it's something close to, I don't know, 18 hours or something like that, flying with your sister on the, underneath the plane. It's just, I think about it now. It's like, I just can't even believe it happened. I was lucky in that my friend from South Africa, he's also a musician, a well-known musician in South Africa, my friend Ard Matthews. He was such a good friend that he actually flew back with me because I was just in such shock, and really supported me through those few days. So, I mean, I can't thank him enough for that. So, having that support, of course, was critical. And then landing back in New York, and then, going directly to my parents' house, and my brothers all picked me up from the airport, and then we all went into the Shiva, which is the Jewish mourning period, together in the house we all grew up in.
I can't imagine the bravery and courage that it took to even take the next second and not even step forward, but to do all of that is unbelievable. And for me, the last time I felt grief was holding my son in my arms who is experiencing anaphylaxis. And I'm not sure which direction this anaphylaxis reaction is going in, whether he's going to make it, whether he's going to be, back in the ER, or what it looks like, hopefully surviving it. And I journal. For me, I journal when I feel grief or anguish or whatever feelings are bubbling up that need to be expressed. And for you, when you felt grief, you turned to music.
Yeah. So when I came back, and just had a minute to, settle and just rest for a moment, in that space, I really was confronted with, what is my life going to be like now? When you go through something like that that's so extreme, there's grief that occurs in the natural process of things, or at least how we consider to be the natural flow and the natural process of things, meaning, my grandmother or my grandfather would die at 92 years old or something like that. And it's still very difficult. It's still a very important grief and mourning process. But it's a different one than something that happens, so tragically like that for someone at such a young age. So it's a different intensity to the grief, in my experience. So it just hits you in a very different way. It's, if I were to describe grief as kind of a series of, being hit by a series of waves, big ocean waves. Well, the kind of wave that hit me, I would have to describe as like a tidal wave, like, just a 100-foot wall of water just smashing into you at 100 miles an hour, and just levels you. So if you're actually, like, able to actually get up from that, then and then the waves keep coming, and in the beginning they're pretty frequent. What we could discuss, and what we'll discuss a little bit later, is that over time those waves do kind of slow down in frequency, and there's more separation, there's a little bit more space between them, and the amplitude of them, the intensity of those waves does diminish somewhat. But they are, for the most part, unpredictable when they happen. You could be in a great mood one day, and all of a sudden, just something small. It's something you look at, a song you hear, just anything, a smell, a food, anything, and nothing at all can trigger that memory of the person you love. And so the wave hits, and you could be in the middle of a group of friends, or you could be in the middle of a meeting, or you could be anywhere, and then the wave comes, and you're overwhelmed with tears welling up, just thinking about them. There's this real kind of presence in the moment of grief that kind of can catch you by surprise. And then the question is, like, how much do you allow it? In the beginning I was like, oh, okay, like, do I try to repress that, or do I feel it? And the moment I was able to just allow myself to feel it, like no matter what, no matter where, it was just, it was so liberating, because it allowed me to reconnect with the love that I had for her and I continue to have for her. So, but in the immediate aftermath, kind of, just trying to figure out what does my life look like from that point. It was very difficult to imagine it because I just didn't even have the energy to get out of bed in the morning, let alone figure out how to have the life that I had. I was at the time I was in the technology field. I was running a company. I was living a pretty dynamic life. I didn't really see how that was going to come back the way it was, but it certainly wasn't clear to me how things were going to move forward. So I had to formulate some kind of plan, like for how I was going to get through this, because the one decision I was able to make was that I wanted to get through it. Now, that's not always a decision I think that people are so clear about. Is do you actually want to get through it? I've spoken to many, many people dealing with all kinds of grief. You'll meet someone that it could be 20 or 30 years later. In a sense, it seems like it just happened yesterday for them because the place they're in still seems very stuck in that moment. And I believe, in a sense, they don't want to move forward. They want to stay tethered to the person so much they stay in the grief because they feel that's the only way they can feel that connection to them. And in a way, moving on is infused with so much guilt that they can't even imagine being happy because in some way in their mind it diminishes the love, the perceived love that they think they have for the person. And I think that's such a tragic perspective, because I don't think the premise is true at all. If the classic question, like, what would the person who died want for you, right? Would they want you to move on with your life and be fulfilled and satisfied and follow your dreams and be happy? Well, I think, of course, every person would say yes to that, right? Of course, they would want that for you. But a lot of people don't allow that. And so for me, that was the first fork in the road. And I really think it's the first fork in the road for everyone. Like, what's your intention? Do you actually want to get through this? Because if you don't, then nothing you do will help. Because that's what that's what your goal is. That's what your frame of mind is. You'll always find an excuse. But if you do want to move forward, if you do want to live life fully and honor the person, right? Realizing it's not a choice. And frankly, I believe that moving forward and finding a way to thrive in your life is more deeply, more meaningfully honoring the person. So that was the first choice I made. And to do that, I said, okay, now I need to build up from the foundation. Now I got to build up from the bottom up. If ever I wake up and I'm not feeling well, I'm kind of achy or got a cold or, just something physical is off. Isn't it so easy to then psychologically also be a little bit off? Like, just kind of, through that physical filter, like things also kind of out in the world look a little less kind of hopeful. Like, right. It's easy to fall into that trap. You're just like, you know what? Like, God, I don't even want to do that, or I don't know, I'm just going to stay in bed. Like, it's just easy to do that. So, but the inverse is also true, right? Like, if you're feeling really good physically, then the opposite is true, that things also look very positive. So there is a correlation between the two that you can't deny. And I said, okay, well, if I need to be emotionally and mentally fit, then I need to be physically fit as well. Of course, I'm dealing with a state where I'm like, I have no energy and I'm not doing anything for my body, and I'm just really not taking care of myself. So I'm in the wrong trajectory. I'm in the wrong lane on the highway, right? And so I said, okay, well, let me figure that out. But now, like, how am I even going to do that? I'm not going to the gym. I'm out in, near my parents' house. I'm far from anything. I got a miraculous visit from one of my closest childhood friends, my friend Isaac. We went to Jewish school together, grew up since we were little kids together. And he comes over to visit during that morning period, during the Shiva period. He actually lived, so again, I'm visiting my parents in Brooklyn. And of course, I grew up near him. So he lives just a few blocks away at the time. And so he visits and he says, "Hey, Murray, I am training for the marathon. Why don't you come on a run with me?" I was like, "Come on a run with you? I can't even get up to walk to the kitchen." Okay. Like, what are you kidding? So he says, "Look, I'm going to pick you up tomorrow. We're going to just do a short, couple miles." I said, "Okay, whatever, fine." He knocks on my door at 8 a.m. the next day, drags me out of bed. We go for this run. And I got to tell you, and I was not a runner. Okay. This is like, I'm not, I'm running now from scratch. Right. So he picks me up. We go for this run. And I'll tell you, about half a mile in, I like can barely catch my breath. And then I stop and I'm all emotional and I'm, welling up and I'm tearing up. And he just is patient with me. And he says, "Look, we'll just keep going a little more." We end up doing the 2 miles, and the 2 miles a few days later turned to 3, turned to 4, turned to 8, turned to 12, turned to 20-mile runs, practice runs. And then I signed up for the London Marathon. And that was actually only a few months later. And I said, "You know what? I'm going to sign up for that thing. I'm going to do it with my buddy. And it's going to be this goal that I set to just get me out of bed and get me moving, just get my body moving." And I trained. We did our long runs every weekend, short runs during the week. And I ended up going to London and running that marathon with him. And one of the most insane stories of my healing happened on that run, which was, so the run was on a Sunday. Marathons are usually on a Sunday, and on Friday I spoke to my parents back in Brooklyn. So now I'm in London speaking to my parents in Brooklyn, and they wished me a good run. And then my mother said something curious, and she goes, "I wish you a good run." And she goes, "I heard about this, like, when runners hit the wall, they hit the wall, they get, tired, they don't think they can finish. Like, where is that? Like, what mile is that?" And I'm like, I don't know. It's like, because at this point I actually had never run a full marathon. Like, you don't run a full marathon when you're training. You run like up to 20 or 22 miles, but you don't actually do the full thing. So I said, "Well, I think it's probably going to be around 20 miles, maybe 22, something like that." She goes, "Okay, well, good luck," And of course, I wish them a Shabbat Shalom. It was Friday night, so I wish them a Shabbat Shalom. And from that point, of course, they don't use the phone or any electronics or drive or anything like that. So the next time I would speak to them would be probably after the marathon. So we hang up the phone. I then Sunday comes, I start my run. People advise you, by the way, to wear your name on your shirt because then the fans, pastors, the people on the stands can cheer you on, and it's it boosts you up, it lifts you up, it gives you some energy, even though they don't know you, and they don't know you. It's still kind of fun. So now I'm running in London. And especially on the outskirts of London, and everyone's like, "Go, Murray, go, go, go." And of course, they don't know me, but it just sounds, it feels great. You just make believe they do. And it actually works. Like, it's a hack, but it works. And so now I'm running and feeling good. But at about mile 20, I'm like really struggling. And I hear my name, but this time it's not an English accent. And it's not someone just cheering me on. It's someone trying to get my attention. Like, I just hear it in that way with all the noise around me. And I look to my right and I see my mother, like in the front row of hundreds of people on the side. And I'm just completely startled. And I run over, give her a big hug. She then points to my father, who's like 50 feet down, trying to squeeze his way to the front. I mean, you got to remember, it's like thousands of people on the sidelines. Somehow they worked their way to the front. They found me. They actually saw me. They spotted me. We had our moment. And then she said, "Just go run to the end and I'll see you at the end," And I did. I just got all this energy, made it to the end. we then connected, and I had a beard at the time. I decided not to shave at all till that point. So it was a 4-month-old beard. And then the next day I shaved it off completely. And then I took my parents to Paris. So that was, it was a very healing moment, for all of us. Um, so that was the physical side. And, Emily, in addition to the physical side, it was like, okay, now I got to work on my emotional side. And of course, the two are connected and interwoven, right? I mean, when we do that level of physical activity, the neurochemicals that are released, I mean, everything is conspiring to connect our mind and body, right? And from an emotional point of view, I turn to music, as you said before. And I would just sit at the piano, I mean, sometimes for an hour, 2 hours, and I would just play, I would just improvise whatever came to me and just play the pain out of me. Music is the language of emotion. And, we even say when we have no words for something, right? When something is just undescribable with the words we have, we turn to music because it's such a sophisticated and complex language. It's a multi-dimensional language. It's not just linear, but it's also, it's like 3-dimensional in that respect. So we can communicate very complex things that we just don't have the words for. And that's what I did day after day. And, the basic premise was if you don't feel out of you that pain, it will stay inside and turn into something else. But it doesn't just leave on its own. It's got to be felt out of us. And that was the journey, through music, was feeling it. And I mean, you have to go deep into it to get through it. So it's actually confronting and feeling more pain before you feel less pain, but that's the nature of it. And that's the nature of the process. And that's why it's difficult, I think, for a lot of people because they bump up against that sudden increase in pain. Now the pain's going up. They're like, whoa, this is what I'm going the other way. So I want to distract from it. I'm going to just turn the TV on and just like stop thinking about this, or I'm going to grab a drink, or I'm going to do there's lots of other behaviors we do. That's the real where the rubber hits the road, because again, back to that original choice. Do you want to stay where you are, or do you want to move forward in life? And that's really, I think, what it comes down to.
It's interesting. We have really similar journeys. When I was experiencing my body image dysmorphia and going through plastic surgeries to try and change my body image and fit this idea of what a model looks like and what my agency wants me to look like in order to be marketable and sell me as a product, I came to this conclusion that this job that I had wasn't serving me. And I walked into my agency and I was like, look, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm done. And they gave me my contract back, which was really great because that doesn't really happen that easily. I think they just felt the energy of me being like, I'm just not in it anymore. It's not serving me. And also, I mean, I had emails back and forth with all the things that, I needed to change and look like or whatever on my body. And I felt like that was a liability to them. So I had breast implants at the time because that was more marketable for a plus size model and you make more money, blah, blah, blah. And I went and had a breast explant after I left the modeling industry because I had actually gotten them, not even for the modeling industry, but for a narcissistic boyfriend who had told me real women have boobs. I should have said real men have brains, but I didn't at the time. And that's part of my journey. On that journey, I trained for the Paris Marathon and I wanted to celebrate my body the way it is naturally and let it perform in such an incredible way, and to celebrate my body in an incredible way. So I was training for the Paris Marathon and I came to this idea and also writing my way through it, feeling the emotion through writing. And yes, it's painful and it's confronting. But there's so much to learn through that feeling of the emotion. And for me, there's no other way. When I feel something, I have to write my way through it, and I have to feel my way through it. And I thought mile 20 was, for me, going to be a time where I experienced God. And I was looking for some holy experience that, I was going to be struck by lightning or something, so profound and earth shaking and rattling that take me and transport me from this intense self-doubt and self-loathing. And, I was looking for that holy moment at mile 20. But actually, mine was mile 15 in Paris, and it was like 85 degrees. I was wearing a long sleeve shirt. Also, Emily on my name tag. Everyone's like, Ale, Emily, let's go, speed up. And I get to mile 15, and I'm like so hot. I am dying of heat. And this musician just comes up, and I'm like a hot mess. I'm stinky. I'm sweaty. I wouldn't even want to be around myself. And this guy puts his arm under me and like carries me and is like, "You've got this," in English. Like, he starts playing the flute for me as we're running. And I was like, let's do this. So he carries me through the tunnel, and I get like this feeling of connection and love that was so universal. And that was like a spark that ignited, okay, I'm going to get to mile 20. Matt had been waiting for me. I had a few friends there who came with me. I'd lived in Paris that summer for like a month or so in Murray, and it was just phenomenal. And Matt like jumped out and ran with me a little bit and almost tripped me because he was like, "Oh my God, there she is." But what I came to find, which was interesting and maybe disappointing, but revealing, is that at mile 20, nothing happened. And what I realized is that, similar to what you're saying, is that you have to choose to want to live. And for me, I think the moment of not having lightning strike me, or, this like, fall over and get on my knees and be, praying or whatever it was, I just realized that I can love myself the way that I am. I don't have to get to mile 20 and run a marathon to do it. And so, like you said, the physical experience was really liberating for me to like unlock the physical and emotional parts of grief.
I hear in Paris, instead of Gatorade on the sidelines, they give you glasses of wine. Is that true? Can you verify
that? That's in Burgundy. There was a marathon where they do that, but no, they do oranges and Gatorade or whatever it is. Propel, I don't even know.
They should at least give you a chocolate croissant at the end of it when you cross the finish line.
Oh no, Matt fully showed up with a Nutella crepe for me, which I was not even in the mood for. I was like, oh my God, I can't even move my legs.
Yeah, you got to have that reward. But what's interesting is that when you think about all the worthwhile things in life, like if you really reflect on the times in life, the moments in life you're going to remember most, the moments in life that had the most impact on your life, they typically are not just the pure pleasure for pleasure's sake moments. They usually are something like you're describing that has an element of challenge, that has an element of difficulty, that has an element of confrontation to it. And then you come through the other side of it, and you grow from it, and you learn from it, and you evolve from it. That's the moments we remember. Yeah, a marathon's not easy. It's not intended to be easy. That's the point. It's intended to push one's limits, both physically and mentally. Climbing a mountain is not easy. It's not supposed to be easy. Otherwise, you take the cable car, okay? You want to climb it. It's hard. It's challenging. And it's rewarding, and you'll never forget it for the rest of your life. And that's the point, I mean, yeah, is it nice to be, do things for pleasure? Yeah, it's fun to, watch some TV and to go for a drink and all that stuff. But are you going to really remember those moments? Probably not. And so that's really, I think, stringing together more experiences like we're describing of these challenges we set out for ourselves, We don't really know if we can do it. We don't know how we're going to be while we're doing it, in it. And it's a journey. I mean, that's the most worthwhile stuff. It's not just physical. I don't just mean running marathons and climbing mountains, but it's also things of the mind, whether it's, taking on the challenge of writing a book or writing music or, whatever it might be. Or the challenges that seem more domestic, like raising a child, like preparing food, like all the things that could be done mindlessly or could be done mindfully as a challenge to lift that activity up to the highest possible level in your mind for you, right? What that is for you, what the standard is for you, based on the values that are yours, right? That's to me deliberate living. That's not living someone else's life. It's not living an expectation, of life from someone else's point of view, be it someone or just society in general from your perception. But no, it's like from your values, from your foundation. What does that look like? And that to me is living bottom up. It's like living deliberately, and I know that's what pulls me forward.
This episode is in memory of Murray Hidary. Murray is inviting the audience to experience a mind travel live, virtual or in person when it's safe, by visiting MindTravel.com for the upcoming schedule. And for those ready for a deeper inquiry into life, he's also extending a free invitation to try Mind Travel Mastery, which I am a part of. And you can learn more about that on mindtravel.com/mastery. You can also find Murray on social media at Murray Hidary. Brave Talks is sponsored by Taja Collection Custom Candles. Taja Collection has designed a very special, really beautiful, amazing Be Pretty Brave candle for all of you listeners who want to light up a beautiful message in your home or send it as a gift to those who could use bravery and courage in their lives. You can find the candle on tajacollection.com. That's TAJA collection.com. And you can search for Be Pretty Brave, and you'll find the candle there. Brave Talks is produced by Madeline Inskeep. Video production is by Wallace Cruz. The music is produced by my dear friend Murray Hidary with Mind Travel. A heartfelt thanks to these three who support Brave Talks with their incredible talent and gifts. If you'd like to receive my monthly thoughts and a recap of this month's Brave Talks, head on over to emilynolan.com and click subscribe. Thanks for listening.